Picture this highly specific, yet universally agonizing scenario.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right. Okay, so you step onto a badminton court for your weekly game. You are in good shape. You hit the gym. You lift weights. Maybe you do some cross training on the side.
You're athletic.
Yeah, exactly. You look at your arms and think, well, I have plenty of physical strength to hit a tiny 2-ounce cork and feather projectile.
It seems like it should be effortless.
It really does. So the game kicks off, the rally gets intense, and suddenly you find yourself totally rushed at the net. The shuttlecock is dropping incredibly low, like hovering right around your shoelaces.
That's the panic zone.
Yes. You lunge forward, you plant your foot heavily, preparing to execute what your brain tells you should be a simple, routine forehand lift to send that shuttle all the way to the back baseline.
Just a standard defensive clear.
Right. So you engage your core, you heave your entire arm upward, putting all of that solid gym-built muscle into the swing.
Yeah.
You are expecting a triumphant, soaring arc.
But that's not what happens, is it?
No. Instead of that graceful clearance, the shuttlecock floats weakly, almost pathetically, and peaks right at midcourt. It just hangs there in the air for what feels like an eternity.
An absolute gift for the opponent.
Exactly. Your opponent, who, by the way, probably hasn't lifted a dumbbell in a decade, just grins, lines it up, and effortlessly smashes it straight down into the floorboards at 100 miles an hour.
It is brutal.
Or maybe an even more maddening scenario. The game literally just started, the score is 0-0, and you cannot even get your basic, gentle short serve over the net.
Oh, the first serve jitters.
It either sails wildly out of bounds or you just dump it straight into the white tape. It is an incredibly infuriating experience, feeling your own body like completely betray you.
It really is the ultimate rite of passage for any intermediate player. That shocking, humbling moment when you realize that brute muscular force is completely useless in this environment.
It really is.
You feel strong, but the output is disastrously weak.
Which is the core focus of our deep dive today. We are exploring the hidden biomechanics of forehand power, and we're heavily drawing on some fascinating source material regarding the overlooked symmetry of how we hit serves and lifts.
It's such a great document.
It really is. We are going to totally deconstruct the badminton forehand right from the ground up to prove to you that generating explosive power on the court has absolutely nothing to do with how much you can bench press.
Nothing at all.
We are talking about secret anatomical levers, the pure physics of torque, and this complex mind-body connection that you are likely fighting against every single time you pick up a racket.
And the broader implication here is what makes this so captivating, I mean, to me at least.
Yeah.
We aren't just giving a tutorial on sports technique today.
Right.
We're really looking at a masterclass in human energy transfer. When we step into a highly specialized biomechanical environment like a court, our primal, everyday movement instincts.
The ones we rely on normally.
Exactly. The things our nervous system defaults to when we want to move an object, they often turn out to be the exact mechanisms that actively sabotage our performance.
So let's start by unpacking that sabotage at the most basic level. Let's go back to that agonizing moment at the net.
The shoelace lunge.
Yeah. You are lunging, the shuttle is near your ankles, and you need to send it 20 feet in the air to the back line. Why do we fail so miserably despite feeling like we are trying so hard?
Well, the core breakdown of the forehand lift in the source material highlights the foundational error almost everyone makes.
Which is?
Attempting to use the entire arm as a single lifting mechanism, rather than treating the arm as a whip that culminates in a flick or a spring.
Right, the whole arm heave.
Yeah. To understand why that heave is a mechanical failure, we have to isolate the muscle groups your brain is panicking to use.
Okay, walk me through that.
When you are in that deep lunge and your eye tracks that shuttle dropping fast, your brain perceives an emergency. It sees a heavy task.
Like moving an object a long distance against gravity.
Precisely. And the central nervous system's default response to a quote-unquote heavy task is to recruit the largest, strongest muscle groups available. So it immediately activates your shoulder, your deltoids, and your bicep.
So you end up swinging your arm from the shoulder socket like a massive pendulum.
Exactly. And doing that feels incredibly powerful in the moment.
Oh, definitely. Your heart rate spikes, you feel the tension in your shoulder, your bicep is flexing, your internal feedback loop is screaming, maximum effort applied.
You are definitely burning calories and applying force, but you're running into a brutal physics problem regarding levers and pivot points.
Because the shoulder is too far away from the racket head.
Yes. When you use the shoulder joint as your primary pivot, you're creating a very long, very wide swing arc. But in racket sports, the only metric that dictates how fast and how far the projectile will travel is the terminal speed of the racket head.
At the exact microsecond of impact.
Right. Moving a long lever from the very top takes a massive amount of time to accelerate. By the time the racket head actually reaches the shuttle, it's moving sluggishly.
So you generate a wide swing, but the actual head speed is incredibly slow.
Which gives you that sluggish, flat trajectory that gets smashed.
I always think of this like trying to shovel really heavy, rain-soaked soil, but refusing to bend your elbows or wrists.
Oh, that's a great visual.
Right. You are gripping that shovel handle, keeping your back and arms totally stiff, and just heaving from the shoulders. You are burning massive amounts of energy. You're exhausted after 3 scoops, but the actual blade of the shovel is barely moving fast enough to toss the dirt.
There is zero explosive payoff at the end of the tool.
Exactly. You're just dragging dead weight through space.
That analogy captures the inefficiency perfectly. You are applying a sustained, grinding force over a long duration. A shuttlecock doesn't need to be pushed. It needs sudden, violent acceleration.
Which leads directly to the second massive anatomical error highlighted in the deep dive, the stiff wrist.
Right. If you are locked into that stiff-armed shoveling motion, your grip on the racket changes dramatically.
Oh, the grip becomes a matter of life and death. You squeeze that handle so hard your knuckles turn white. You are trying to muscle the racket.
And by doing so, you completely sever your own kinetic chain. You clamp down with a death grip from the very start of your lunge.
Just locking everything up.
Exactly. By locking the muscles in your forearm, wrist, and fingers, you immobilize the wrist joint. You effectively turn your shoulder, arm, wrist, and the racket shaft into one single fused rod.
And energy can't travel through a fused rod very well.
Energy is supposed to travel like a wave. From the ground, through the torso, down the arm, accelerating through the wrist, and snapping at the fingers.
But when you lock the wrist,
the wave crashes and dies right at your forearm. There is no transfer of speed to the racket head.
It also completely ruins the angle of the shot, which is the third major pitfall. If my arm is a fused rod swinging from the shoulder, the racket face naturally just points straight ahead.
It's geometric inevitability. You are shoveling forward, so the strings face forward.
So when impact happens, all that slow, grinding force is directed horizontally.
And you end up pushing the shuttle flat over the net rather than scooping underneath it. A defensive lift requires the racket face to be angled backward, pointing up toward the ceiling.
So the strings can slide under the cork and send it vertically.
Exactly. And a stiff wrist makes that angle physically impossible.
So this leaves us with a pretty glaring practical problem. If I'm stuck at the net from a dead stop, and I am expressly forbidden from heaving with my shoulder or using my big muscles, where on earth does the power come from?
Right. How do you generate explosive force from nothing?
Yeah.
We have to shift our understanding from kinetic pushing force to elastic potential energy. The functional fix for this is an elegant concept from the text known as the loose-tight mechanism.
Loose-tight, okay.
It relies entirely on timing and the rapid contraction of tiny muscles, rather than the sustained effort of large ones.
Walk me through the actual physical sensation of that. If I'm lunging toward the net right now, what should my hand be doing?
During your approach, your hand needs to be disconcertingly relaxed. As you step in, your palm should actually feel hollow or empty against the grip.
Wait, empty?
Yes. Your fingers are just barely cradling the racket, providing just enough friction so it doesn't fall onto the floor. This is the loose phase.
It almost feels irresponsible, like someone could just tap my arm and knock the racket out of my hand.
It does feel weird at first.
Oh.
But by staying loose, you are allowing the tendons and muscles in your forearm to stretch out fully without any premature tension. You're creating a reservoir of potential energy.
Okay, so I'm loose as I approach. What triggers the power?
The trigger is the tight phase, and it happens in a fraction of a second. At the absolute last microsecond, right as the shuttle reaches your strike zone, you execute a violent, sudden squeeze of the bottom 3 fingers on your grip.
Just the bottom 3.
Your middle, ring, and pinky fingers. That isolated, rapid contraction of those small finger muscles acts as a detonator. It snaps the racket head forward into the shuttle with shocking velocity.
Wow.
You bypass the slow shoulder swing entirely and just spring the racket face into the cork.
I love the visual imagery that the source uses to teach this. It's the wet dog or flicking water concept.
Yes, that's perfect.
If you wash your hands in a sink and there are no paper towels, you don't dry your hands by locking your elbows and swinging your entire arms from the shoulders.
You look ridiculous.
You hold your hands out and violently, sharply snap your wrists and fingers to flick the water droplets away.
That snapping motion isolates the exact neuromuscular pathway you need for the badminton lift. It's entirely localized in the forearm and digits.
And there's an auditory cue too, right?
Yes, there is a distinct auditory way to confirm you've done this correctly. When you execute that tiny, violent finger squeeze, the sheer speed of the racket head compresses the cork and the strings instantly.
So it makes a sound.
The sound it makes is a highly satisfying, sharp pop, like a small firecracker.
But if I go back to my old ways, the death grip and the shoulder heave.
It sounds completely different. It sounds like a dull, heavy thud. You are just mashing the strings against the cork over a longer period of contact rather than snapping through it.
The tactical implications of this tiny movement are mind-blowing to me. If generating power only requires me to loosely hold the racket and then just squeeze my pinky and ring finger, I don't need a huge wind-up.
None at all.
I don't need to swing my arm back, which means I don't have to telegraph my shot to the person across the net.
The deception aspect is massive. If your physical motion is restricted to a millimeter of finger movement, your body language is entirely silent.
The opponent cannot read your shoulders or your torso to anticipate where the shuttle is going.
You can actually use your peripheral vision to watch your opponent instead of hyper-focusing on the shuttle.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you lunge in, keeping your body perfectly still. The opponent thinks, they have no momentum. They have to play a soft shot just over the net.
So they rush forward to intercept it.
And right as they commit to moving forward, you just squeeze those 3 fingers, pop, the shuttle rockets over their head to the back boundary line.
And they're left completely stranded because you didn't give them a single visual warning. It is the pinnacle of court strategy, hiding immense power inside a microscopic physical movement.
This brings up a really fascinating contradiction, though. We've established that the forehand requires this delicate finger flick.
Right.
But any player listening to this knows that hitting a backhand lift from the net,
Which is universally considered the weaker side.
exactly the weaker side of the body, it somehow feels infinitely easier, more natural, and more powerful than the forehand. Why is our supposedly dominant side so much harder to use?
The backhand feeling stronger is actually an anatomical illusion.
An illusion.
Yes. It feels easier because the human hand provides structural cheating on that side. Think about how you grip the racket for a backhand. You rotate the handle, and your thumb rests flat and extended against that wide, flat bevel on the back of the grip.
Right, my thumb is pointing straight up the shaft toward the racket head.
By placing your thumb there, you have instantly created a highly stable, bone-supported fulcrum. Your thumb acts like a reinforced backstop.
Oh, I see.
When you want to push the racket forward and upward to hit the shuttle, you have a solid pillar of bone and muscle pushing directly against the direction of travel.
The hand's architecture perfectly supports a simple pushing and flicking motion.
You don't have to think about it. The leverage is built in.
But when I switch to a standard forehand grip, that all disappears.
The support vanishes. On a proper forehand grip, the thumb is wrapped around the side of the handle, casually resting near the middle finger.
So you no longer have a rigid backstop pushing against the direction of the shuttle?
The handle feels loose and unsupported from behind.
And because our hand feels naked and unsupported, our brain panics again. It realizes the fingers alone feel too weak to push the racket, so it recruits the shoulder to take over the job.
We revert to what the text describes as lifting a sedan chair.
Oh, that visual is incredibly accurate.
Isn't it? Imagine holding the heavy wooden pole of a sedan chair at your waist. You wouldn't use your wrist to lift it.
No, you would lock your arm, engage your shoulder, and heave upward with your entire body.
And we treat the lightweight badminton racket like a heavy wooden beam simply because we lack thumb support on the forehand side.
So we can't use our shoulder to lift the sedan chair, and we don't have a thumb to act as a backstop. How do we mechanically compensate on the forehand?
We have to completely abandon the concept of a linear push or lift. You cannot move your arm straight up and down.
Okay, so what do we do?
You have to introduce rotational torque. The biomechanical secret to the forehand is replacing the pushing motion with outward forearm rotation.
Let's get really specific with this. This outward rotation is often called turning the key. I want to break down exactly how this feels, starting with the preparation. When I lunge to the net for a forehand, What does my loaded spring look like?
Well, your preparation needs to look completely wrong to an untrained observer.
Completely wrong.
Yes. As you reach your arm out toward the net, the racket frame should not be facing the net at all. It should be slicing through the air completely sideways.
Sideways.
Your palm should be facing to your left, or even slightly angled down toward the floor.
It feels like I'm stepping in to firmly shake someone's hand, or like holding a meat cleaver to chop vegetables on a cutting board.
The thin edge of the racket frame is leading the charge, not the strings.
My wrist is cocked back, but I couldn't hit the shuttle forward if I tried because the strings are facing the sidewalls.
By holding that sideways, chopping posture,
Yeah.
you have maximally stretched the internal rotator muscles of your forearm. You have wound the spring tight.
Okay, so I'm wound up.
The magic happens during the execution phase. As the shuttle enters your strike zone, you perform a violent, rapid outward twisting of your entire forearm.
In anatomy, this is called supination, right?
Supination, exactly.
So my forearm rolls from the pinky side outward toward the thumb side.
Imagine you are faced with a heavy, rusted doorknob, and you have to forcefully twist it to the right to crack it open. Or turning a stiff key in a broken lock.
Got it.
Your palm flashes from facing the left wall to facing straight up toward the ceiling in a fraction of a second.
And the beauty of this is that as I violently twist that doorknob, I am simultaneously incorporating that loose, tight finger squeeze we discussed earlier.
They happen simultaneously. The outward rolling of the forearm, the supination, generates the broad, sweeping rotational speed that gives the shot its distance.
And the sudden micro-squeezing of the fingers provides the sharp terminal acceleration that gives the shot its crisp pop.
You are generating massive kinetic energy through torque, which completely eliminates the need for the thumb backstop that the backhand relies on. Rotational force replaces linear force.
There's a fantastic isolation exercise from the source for this that I want every listener to try. It completely rewires how your brain perceives power. It's called the golden drill.
It's so effective.
The next time you are warming up, glue your right upper arm firmly to the side of your rib cage. Just pin your elbow right to your hip bone.
By physically pinning the upper arm and elbow to your torso, you are mechanically disabling your shoulder. You are making it physically impossible to heave the sedan chair.
The big muscles are locked out of the equation.
Exactly.
With your arm pinned, you just stand near the net, drop a shuttle, and try to hit it all the way to the back baseline using only that sideways vegetable chopping preparation, followed by the outward doorknob twist and the finger squeeze.
It feels impossible the first time.
But the first time you do it successfully, and you see the shuttle effortlessly soar 20 feet in the air and land on the back line using just the rotation of your forearm, it is a total paradigm shift.
It proves that the power was never in your bicep.
It really reveals that the body is highly engineered for efficiency, provided you use the correct levers.
Absolutely.
So we've theoretically mastered the supination lift at the net, but let's pivot to a completely different, highly stressful scenario that happens 20 seconds later.
Oh, I know what's coming.
You've warmed up, you know how to turn the key. The match officially begins. It's the very first point of the evening. You step up to the service line. You decide to execute a delicate, precise short serve, aiming to skim the shuttle just 1 millimeter over the top of the net tape.
The most delicate shot in the game.
You step, you flip, and you dump it straight into the net. Or you hit it a foot too high and your opponent immediately kills it. Why does all our fine motor precision completely vanish in the first 5 minutes of play?
This phenomenon is incredibly well documented, and we refer to it as the cold engine.
The cold engine.
Yes. Hitting a short forehand serve requires an astonishing degree of fine motor control. You are relying on the peripheral nervous system to command the absolute smallest intrinsic muscles in your fingers and wrist to apply a hyperspecific amount of force.
And those tiny, delicate systems despise being cold.
They really do. There is a multi-layered biological and psychological breakdown happening in your body at a score of 0 to 0.
Let's dig into the biology of that breakdown. What is physically happening inside my hand when I step into a cold gym?
The primary culprit is viscosity. Inside all of your joints, your wrist capsule, the knuckles of your fingers, you have synovial fluid.
Right.
Its job is to lubricate the joint capsule and ensure smooth, frictionless movement. However, synovial fluid is highly temperature dependent.
Like motor oil.
Exactly. When your body is at rest or ambient temperatures are low, that fluid thickens. It becomes incredibly viscous like cold honey or motor oil in the dead of winter.
So my joints literally have thicker liquid inside them, adding mechanical resistance. It's like leaving thick rubber bands out in the snow. They get stiff, they lose their snap, and if you try to stretch them quickly, they fight back or they just snap.
That is the exact mechanical reality of your hand. Your brain wants to execute a delicate millimeter adjustment to feather the shuttle over the tape. It sends the signal.
But the hardware won't cooperate.
But the finger joints, bogged down by viscous synovial fluid, physically resist the movement. They are too stiff to comply with the microadjustment.
And the body hates failing, so it tries to help out in the worst way possible. If the fingers won't bend smoothly, the brain realizes the racket isn't moving, so it immediately calls in the shoulder again to just forcefully push the entire arm forward to get the job done.
The shoulder acts as a blunt instrument replacing a scalpel. You lose all trajectory control, and the serve either hits the tape or pops up high.
It's so frustrating.
But viscosity is only the first biological hurdle. The second is proprioceptive calibration.
Proprioception. That is our internal GPS, right? The sense of where our limbs are in space without having to visually look at them.
Yes, it is the neural map that connects intention to physical output. But when you first start playing, there is a severe brain-body latency.
Oh, like lag.
Think of it as a software calibration error. Your eyes look at the net, they measure the distance, they gauge the height of the tape, and the brain calculates an equation. To clear this obstacle, I require power level 3.
Okay, power level 3.
The brain dispatches the power level 3 electrical signal down the nerves to your forearm.
But because the engine is cold and the nerve conduction might be sluggish, the physical hardware doesn't output a 3.
Exactly. The cold arm receives the signal, struggles against the viscous joints, and only outputs a power level of 2. The shuttle hits the net.
And then what happens?
The brain instantly registers the failure. So on the next serve, the brain overcompensates. It thinks, okay, the arm is sluggish today. To get a 3, I need to ask for a 5.
It sends a 5.
It sends a 5, the arm jerks forward, and you hit the shuttle 2 feet in the air, resulting in an easy smash for your opponent.
I always compare this to coming inside from shoveling snow in freezing temperatures, sitting down at your computer and trying to type a complex, case-sensitive password.
That's a perfect analogy.
Your brain knows the exact sequence of letters. The software is perfect.
Yep.
But your freezing, stiff fingers keep mashing 2 keys at once or missing the shift key. The hardware is completely incapable of executing the software's commands until it thaws out.
The neural pathways physically require dozens of repetitions.
Does it do?
Dozens of real-time sensory feedback loops of hitting the shuttle and watching its trajectory to recalibrate the specific force-to-distance ratio required for that exact day, the exact ambient temperature, and the specific speed of the shuttlecock you were using.
And as if the thick joint fluid and the software lag weren't enough, we also have to fight our own psychology, the anxiety of the first serve.
Psychological tension compounds the biological issues exponentially. The serve is the only truly closed skill in the entire sport.
Meaning, you are in total control. During a rally, you are sprinting, reacting, surviving. But on a serve, everyone stops. The gym goes quiet, you stand still, and you alone dictate when the action begins.
That stillness is a breeding ground for anxiety. Early game adrenaline floods your system. This triggers a mild sympathetic nervous system response, fight or flight.
Right.
Your breathing becomes shallow, your heart rate elevates prematurely, and instinctively, without any conscious thought, your hand clamps down on the racket handle.
The death grip returns. Because we are nervous, we squeeze.
And by squeezing out of anxiety, you actively lock down the very wrist and finger joints that are already struggling with cold synovial fluid.
Yeah.
You immobilize your own fine motor controls because of stage fright.
So we are battling thick joint oil, software lag, and panic-induced muscle locking. How do we rapidly biohack this cold engine so we don't look like amateurs in the first 5 minutes?
We have to force the body to heat up the local tissues quickly before we even touch a shuttle. The most effective pregame routine from our source starts with addressing the blood flow.
How do we do that?
You stand there and perform 30 to 50 rapid, violent, open and close fist clenches.
Just repeatedly making a fist and splaying your fingers wide.
Yes, but with maximum velocity. Spread your fingers as wide as physically possible, feeling the stretch, then snap them shut into a tight fist as fast as you can. Doing this 40 times forces massive localized vasodilation.
So you are manually pumping warm blood directly into the forearm and the intrinsic muscles of the hand,
Instantly raising the tissue temperature and making them pliable.
Once the muscles are warm, how do we fix the stiff synovial fluid in the joints?
You move to exaggerated figure-8 wrist circles. You aren't just limply rolling your hands around. You want to articulate the wrist joint through its absolute maximum physical range of motion, carving deep figure eights in the air.
Really churning it.
This severe mechanical churning action physically stimulates the joint capsule to secrete fresh, warm synovial fluid. You are literally greasing the hinges so the joint glides instead of catches.
And for the psychological panic, how do we calm the mind down so we don't crush the handle?
You have to utilize a tactical mental cue to lower the emotional stakes. For the first few points of a match, your internal monologue should not be, "I am going to hit a devastating, unreturnable serve that skims the tape perfectly."
That's too much pressure.
Your only thought should be, "Just clear the net."
Give yourself permission to be slightly mediocre for 2 minutes. Except that the serve might be an inch higher than you want, just to get the rally started and get the body moving.
Exactly. By lowering the stakes, you remove the anxiety, which releases the death grip, which allows your warm joints to actually function. You are trading a tiny bit of tactical advantage early on for the opportunity to let your nervous system fully come online without stress.
That makes total sense.
Now, it's worth noting that if you are warming up for a high single serve, where you want to launch the shuttle to the rafters, the protocol changes.
Because a high serve is an explosive power movement, not a delicate touch movement.
Precisely. A high serve requires recruiting a massive kinetic chain from the floor to your fingertips. To prepare for that, you need large dynamic movements. Sweeping backward arm circles, like you're swinging the backstroke, to dynamically stretch the pectorals and mobilize the rotator cuff. But more importantly, you must prepare the lower body.
Why the lower body? I'm hitting the shuttle with my hand.
Because true power originates in the floor. A powerful high serve requires a massive weight transfer from your back foot, surging through your hips and rotating into your front foot.
Ah, I see.
If your hips are tight from sitting at a desk all day, that rotational energy is blocked. You end up having to muscle the shot with just your arm, and the serve falls into the midcourt. Deep, twisting lunges are crucial to unlock the hip flexors and allow that wave of energy to travel upward.
Okay, our engine is fully warmed up, our hips are loose, our synovial fluid is flowing. We are ready to execute.
Ready to go.
But this leads us to the most mind-bending, counterintuitive revelation of this entire deep dive.
The paradox.
Yes. We just spent a massive amount of time detailing how hitting a forehand lift from the net requires outward rotation. Supination, turning the doorknob outward, scooping under the shuttle.
Yes, supination to open the racket face to the ceiling.
Well, a high serve is also a forehand shot. It also starts from a dead stop in a low position around the waist and requires a massive upward swing to send the shuttle high into the air. Anyone looking at this logically would assume that the high serve and the net lift are the exact same mechanical motion, just executed from slightly different spots on the court.
It is the most common logical assumption to make,
Yeah.
and it is entirely biologically incorrect.
Mind-blowing.
The motions are not the same. They are, in fact, biomechanically opposite.
Opposite forces. This is what the source calls the great forehand paradox. Let's really pull this apart because this fundamentally changes how you understand your own arm.
The high serve is powered exclusively by internal rotation, pronation.
Pronation.
The net lift, as we discussed, is powered by external rotation, supination.
Let's contrast these two forces. Explain the anatomy and the physics of pronation, the engine of the high serve.
Pronation is an inward rolling of the forearm. It is the movement humans are naturally evolutionarily engineered to execute with maximum force.
Like what?
Imagine you are standing on the edge of a lake, holding a smooth, flat stone, and you want to skip it across the water as hard as you can. Or picture a Major League Baseball pitcher snapping off a fastball. As your arm accelerates forward, your forearm instinctively rolls inward.
You finish the violent motion with your palm facing down toward the dirt or pointing away to your left.
It's the universal human throwing motion. Our shoulders and elbows are practically designed around this inward snap. It leverages the body's optimal kinetic chain.
Because it is our natural throwing motion, pronation allows us to generate maximum shear velocity and raw kinetic energy. Your arm can spin inward much faster and harder than it can spin outward.
Exactly. And what is the racket face doing during this inward pronation?
Good question.
As your forearm twists inward, the racket face aggressively closes. It rotates from facing upward to facing straight ahead and eventually angles slightly downward as your wrist snaps over.
This means at the exact split second of impact on a high serve, the strings strike the cork squarely from behind.
transferring 100% of your rotational force directly forward into the trajectory.
Contrast that throwing motion with supination, the engine of the net lift.
Supination is the outward rotation. Imagine a waiter holding a heavy tray of drinks balanced on one hand, palm perfectly flat facing the ceiling. Or imagine sticking your hand out from under an umbrella to catch raindrops in your palm.
Your forearm rolls outward, ending with your palm completely exposed to the sky.
If pronation is violently skipping a stone, supination feels much more passive. It feels like a scoop or a catch. It is inherently less violent, and it sacrifices raw forward speed.
But what it sacrifices in sheer velocity, it gains in angular manipulation.
Yes. As you supinate outward, the racket face naturally opens. It angles backward, laying flat, which allows the strings to slide underneath the falling shuttlecock and shoot it vertically.
This makes perfect anatomical sense, but I have to push back here on behalf of every single player who is obsessed with maximizing power.
Go for it.
If pronation, that inward stone-skipping motion, is our evolutionary powerhouse, our strongest and fastest motion, why am I not allowed to use it at the net? If I need to clear a shuttle from my ankles all the way to the baseline, why wouldn't I use my strongest possible weapon?
It is a brilliant question, but it ignores the physics of the strike zone. The height of the shuttle completely dictates which rotation you are permitted to use.
Okay, so where is the shuttle when you are forced to hit a defensive lift?
It's terribly low, usually dropping past your knees, heading towards your ankles. It is well below the top of the net tape.
Precisely, you are hitting upward from a deficit.
Now, recall what we just established about the racket face during that powerful pronation throw.
The racket face closes. It snaps inward and points slightly down at the end of the throw.
So imagine you are lunging at your knees. The shuttle is inches from the floor. You unleash your absolute, maximum, most powerful pronation throw. At the exact moment of impact, your racket face closes downward.
Uh-oh.
You will strike the shuttle with earth-shattering power and drive it directly into the wooden floorboards in front of your own feet.
Because the force vector is pointing down into the ground.
Exactly. Or, if you happen to catch the shuttle slightly higher, you will hit it with immense speed directly into the net tape. You have abundant power, but a disastrously wrong trajectory.
When a projectile is below the level of the net, raw speed is irrelevant if the angle is wrong.
You must prioritize trajectory over velocity. Supination, that outward weaker roll, is the only physical mechanism that allows you to open the door, get the strings underneath the cork, and create the steep upward angle necessary to safely clear the net.
So the geography of the court and the height of the shuttle fundamentally command whether the arm twists inward or outward. It's unavoidable physics.
Completely unavoidable.
But as we all know, human beings are incredibly stubborn, clever creatures. If a specific technique, like mastering outward forearm rotation, feels difficult or unnatural, our brains will immediately invent a way to cheat.
We are grandmasters of structural compensation. We will contort our bodies into highly inefficient, sometimes dangerous postures, just to bypass a difficult skill and get the immediate job done.
This brings up an anomaly that I see at the gym every single week. I watch players who absolutely, positively do not use supination. They do not turn the key. They don't twist their forearms outward at all.
Right.
Yet when they lunge to the net, they somehow manage to heave the shuttle all the way to the back baseline. It feels like they are defying the physics we just laid out. How are they succeeding without the rotation?
Well, they are not defying physics. They are utilizing severe compensations. They've unconsciously developed flawed workarounds to completely bypass the need for supination.
What's the most common one?
The most notorious and widespread of these cheats is the panhandle grip.
The panhandle trap. Break down exactly what this looks like.
Imagine standing in your kitchen, grabbing a frying pan by the handle, preparing to flip a heavy pancake. Your thumb is likely resting along the very top edge or side of the handle, pointing toward the pan. You are holding it like a club.
Instead of the proper V-shaped grip where the thumb wraps casually around the bevels?
Right. When a player grabs a badminton racket with this panhandle grip, an interesting geometric shift happens. Hold the racket out in front of you like a frying pan. Notice where the strings are pointing.
They are naturally facing dead ahead, perfectly flat to the net, without you having to twist your arm, cock your wrist, or prepare any rotational spring.
The strings are pre-aligned to the target.
Exactly.
Because the face is already flat to the net, the player doesn't have to learn supination. They bypass forearm rotation entirely. To generate power, they just revert back to the sedan chair. They lock their wrist and swing their entire arm straight back and straight forward, like a giant grandfather clock pendulum, using the shoulder as the only lever.
And to their credit, it works initially. They hit it, and the shuttle flies deep into the backcourt. So if it goes the distance, why is it considered such a dangerous trap?
It is a trap because of trajectory and deception. When you combine a panhandle grip with a stiff pendulum swing, you can generate forward distance, but you cannot generate vertical height.
The trajectory of the shot is entirely flat.
It travels like a bullet, skimming low over the net tape and traveling horizontally through the midcourt.
Which means it is flying right at chest height, past the opponent.
It is tactical disaster. A proper defensive lift needs to soar high toward the ceiling, traveling over the opponent's extended reach, and drop vertically straight down into the back corners.
And a flat, panhandle shot never gets above the opponent's head.
If they are standing near the net or midcourt, they simply raise their racket and effortlessly intercept your flat drive, smashing it back into your face before you've even recovered from your lunge.
Ow!
Furthermore, a pendulum swing requires a massive, highly visible shoulder windup. You are broadcasting your intentions to the entire gym. The opponent sees your shoulder drop and instantly knows exactly what shot is coming.
There is another, arguably more dramatic compensation the research points out, the full swing rollover. What is happening mechanically there?
In this scenario, the player might actually be holding the racket with the correct relaxed grip, but they haven't mastered the explosive, compact, loose, tight snap of the fingers. Because they lack that micro-explosiveness, they try to generate power through sheer massive momentum.
So they take a huge swing.
They take a gigantic swing from the shoulder, strike the shuttle, and then violently wrap their entire arm and wrist over the top of their opposite shoulder.
It looks exactly like a tennis player hitting a massive looping topspin forehand from the baseline. The racket ends up wrapped around their neck.
That's the exact motion. They are relying on a massive follow-through to drag the shuttle deep into the court. And while this heavily exaggerated motion can absolutely send the shuttle to the baseline, it fails completely in the context of the sport.
Because badminton is too fast.
Far too fast. That tennis-style swing requires an enormous amount of physical space and, crucially, a massive amount of time to execute.
In a fast-paced defensive scramble where the opponent is raining down jump smashes at 200 kilometers an hour, you have perhaps a tenth of a second to react.
You do not have the time to orchestrate a massive shoulder windup and a full-body follow-through. You need a defense that is compact, instantaneous, and explosive. The rollover swing gets you killed in fast rallies.
If you are listening to this and wondering if you are secretly guilty of this, there is a brilliant, immediate self-test from the text you can do. Grab your racket right now, hold it out directly in front of you, extending your arm as if you are preparing to hit a net lift. Look closely at your forearm and the strings.
This is very revealing.
If your forearm feels completely relaxed and untwisted, and yet the strings are pointing perfectly flat, parallel to the wall in front of you, I hate to break it to you, but you are trapped in the panhandle grip.
To hold a racket correctly for a forehand, you must physically feel a slight tension. You have to actively twist your forearm slightly inward just to get the strings to face forward. If it feels totally relaxed and flat from the resting position, your foundation is flawed.
Okay, let's flip this entire conversation on its head and look at the inverse error. We established that using pronation, the downward throwing motion, at the net results in smashing the shuttle into your own floorboards.
Right.
But what happens if we reverse the equation? What happens if a player gets confused and tries to use supination, the outward-upward scooping motion, to hit a high serve from their waist?
This creates what is functionally a Frankenstein shot. It is a grotesque mismatch of biomechanics and court positioning that yields catastrophic results across the board.
Let's break down the specific disasters of this Frankenstein serve. The first consequence is something known as the skyrocket.
Recall that the inherent physical nature of supination is to open the racket face entirely upward, facing the sky. When you are hitting a net lift from your ankles, you need that severe upward angle.
But a serve is struck from around waist height.
You are already starting 2 to 3 feet higher off the ground. If you apply a massive, heavy supination force from your waist, the shuttle doesn't travel forward. It goes entirely vertical.
Literally straight up into the air, like a rocket launch.
It will soar incredibly high, perhaps brushing the ceiling beams, but it has zero horizontal penetration. You will not travel toward the opponent's baseline.
So it just floats up and parachutes straight down into the exact middle of the court.
It lands in the midcourt, which is the absolute worst place to put a shuttle. It hangs in the air for an eternity, providing your opponent with ample time to comfortably position themselves underneath it, wind up their strongest pronation swing, and utterly obliterate the shuttle. It is a tactical gift.
The second consequence of the Frankenstein serve is what poker players call the tell.
Yes, the total loss of deception. Because supination is not our body's natural power generator, trying to force it to send a shuttle 40 feet requires an extreme physical overcompensation. You have to drop your arm incredibly low, bending your knees deeply to create a massive scooping runway to generate enough momentum.
So the moment you drop your shoulder down to your knees, the entire gym knows you are gearing up for a massive upward scoop.
Your opponent instantly reads the body language. They know a high serve is coming, and they can completely rule out the possibility of a delicate short serve, because the physical preparations for the two shots now look entirely different.
A good server uses the exact same compact posture for both a short and a high serve, creating total ambiguity until the moment of impact.
The massive scoop destroys that ambiguity.
But the third consequence is genuinely alarming. It's not just about losing the point, it's about physical damage. The injury risk.
This is perhaps the most vital takeaway. If you persistently try to hit powerful, full-court shots from the waist using supination, you are going to war against your body's evolutionary design.
How so?
You are demanding explosive forward power from a joint mechanism, external rotation, that is designed for controlled lifting, not violent throwing.
Because the body desperately wants to pronate to generate that much force.
Exactly. Forcing severe external rotation against the physical resistance of the shuttle in the air puts immense unnatural shearing stress on the ligaments and tendons of the arm. Specifically, it heavily loads the medial epicondyle, the bony bump on the inside of your elbow.
This leads to medial epicondylitis, commonly known as golfer's elbow.
Golfer's elbow and severe chronic inflammation of the bicep tendon. The human arm is simply not architecturally built to transmit maximum violent kinetic energy through a fully externally rotated elbow joint. You are grinding the gears of your own anatomy.
So the absolute golden rule, never, ever use supination to serve. Wait, the deep dive mentions one very specific, highly nuanced exception to this rule.
There's one solitary exception, and it exists entirely in the tactical realm of doubles play, the flick serve.
How does a flick serve violate the rule safely?
In a high-level doubles match, the server almost always utilizes a very tight, compact posture, often using a backhand grip, to deliver a delicate short serve just over the tape. They assume a posture where the racket face is lightly supinated, facing slightly upward, ready to just gently tap the shuttle.
And the opponent, expecting this soft tap, aggressively creeps forward, towing the service line, ready to pounce and rush the net.
They lean their weight forward, committing to the net, and then, at the absolute last microsecond, the server doesn't tap it. Instead, they utilize that pure, explosive, loose, tight finger squeeze we discussed. They suddenly and violently flick the wrist and fingers, utilizing a rapid burst of supination.
Without dropping the shoulder or taking a massive swing.
Exactly. It relies entirely on the hidden tower of the digits. The shuttle rockets upward in a tight arc, passing inches over the leaning opponent's racket, and drops rapidly into the back alley.
Wow.
It works safely because it relies on the snap of the small muscles rather than a heavy heave of the arm, and it works tactically because the entire shot is predicated on punishing an opponent's anticipation.
It's all about weaponizing their own momentum against them. Okay, we have covered hitting upward from the floor at your ankles, the net lift, and we have covered hitting upward from a dead stop at your waist, the serve. But if you look at the geometry of the court, this leaves a massive, glaring blind spot.
The midcourt.
Yes. What on earth do you do during a chaotic rally when the shuttle comes flying at you right at waist height? It's hovering right below the top of the net tape. You aren't serving, so you can't pronate over it, and it hasn't dropped to your ankle, so you don't need to dig it out.
This specific geographical zone is the midcourt, and how a player handles waist-high shuttles is often the sole differentiating factor between an amateur and an advanced tactical player.
The tactical doctrine lays out a very stern, non-negotiable rule for this exact altitude. In the midcourt, never lift. Why is scooping a waist-high shuttle considered a massive tactical error?
It comes down to understanding positional leverage. If a shuttle is at your waist, it is not yet dropped low enough to force you into a desperate defensive posture. You are still standing relatively upright. You are in a neutral or perhaps even an offensive stance.
Right.
If you actively choose to use a supination lift, opening the racket face and intentionally scooping that waist-high shuttle into the rafters, you are making a voluntary decision to hit the shuttle upward.
And the fundamental rule of racket sports, if you hit the ball up, your opponent gets the opportunity to hit it down.
Exactly. By choosing to lift from a neutral position, you're voluntarily surrendering the initiative. You're taking a balanced equation and handing the attack directly to your opponent, practically inviting them to smash the shuttle into your court.
So I am stuck in a geometric trap. If I shouldn't rotate under it to lift using supination, because I'll give away the attack, and I physically can't rotate over it to smash using pronation because the shuttle is an inch below the tape and I'll hit the net. What is the third option? How do I attack a waist-high shuttle?
You abandon severe vertical rotation entirely. The solution in the midcourt is the drive or the push. Instead of trying to rotate under the shuttle, or over the shuttle, you attack it directly from the side.
So instead of a scoop or a throw, it's more like a horizontal punch.
That's a great way to visualize it. You keep the racket face perfectly vertical. You do not open it to the sky. You do not close it to the floor. It faces the opponent's chest. You use an incredibly short, tightly compacted motion, and you sharply snap the fingers forward, punching the shuttle straight out.
The drive.
The drive. Because you strike it with a vertical face and a sharp horizontal snap, the trajectory is flat and remarkably fast. The shuttle skims just millimeters over the net tape, traveling parallel to the floor.
Oh, I see the geometry now. If I hit a fast, flat drive that crosses the net at tape height, as it travels into the opponent's court, gravity begins to pull it down. By the time it reaches them, it is dropping toward their knees.
Precisely. Because you hit it flat and fast, you force the opponent to intercept the shuttle when it is low. And what must an opponent do when a shuttle is low?
They are forced to lift it. They have to use supination to dig it out.
Yes. By hitting a flat drive from the midcourt, you dictate the geometry of the rally. You force the opponent to hit upward, which means they surrender the attack, and you instantly seize the offensive advantage, ready to smash their lift.
It's incredible.
The midcourt is entirely about who blinks first and hits upward. The drive ensures it isn't you.
This is absolutely incredible. We have unpacked an astonishing amount of biomechanical theory today. Let me try to recap the journey of this deep dive. We started with that universally frustrating scenario of the weak net lift and realized that our instinct to use brute force from the shoulder is fundamentally flawed. We discovered the hidden, highly efficient mechanics of forearm supination and the explosive detonator that is the tiny finger squeeze.
We then explored the harsh biological realities of the cold engine during the first few minutes of a match. We detailed how viscous synovial fluid and sluggish proprioceptive calibration cripple our fine motor skills, and how rapid vasodilation techniques can biohack our readiness.
We mapped out the great forehand paradox, proving conclusively that the massive power of a high serve and the defensive scoop of a net lift are driven by totally opposing rotational forces, internal pronation versus external supination. We exposed the severe tactical limitations of the panhandle grip, warned against the tendon-shredding dangers of the Frankenstein shot, and finally, we completely decoded the tactical geography of the midcourt, realizing that the flat drive is the ultimate tool for controlling a rally.
It really is a masterclass in how understanding the invisible, underlying biomechanics of your own body can completely and permanently transform your tactical execution in a high-stress environment.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with something to chew on. We spent the last hour observing how the human body naturally, almost subconsciously, invents cheats like the panhandle grip or the heavy shoulder heave whenever it lacks the proper technique. It instinctively bypasses efficiency and even risks long-term injury just to accomplish the immediate task at hand.
The human brain is an absolute master at creating clever yet highly inefficient physical workarounds to mask our fundamental mechanical errors. So the question I want you to mull over as you go about your week is this. What other physical actions in your daily life, perhaps your posture as you hunch over your keyboard right now, the way you carry heavy groceries, or the repetitive motions in your other hobbies, are actually just your brain's clever, inefficient workarounds for a deeper mechanical imbalance you haven't even noticed yet?
It makes you hyper-aware of every movement you make. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We highly encourage you to take these mental cues, turning the rusted key, feeling the loose, tight finger squeeze right onto the court this week. See you next time.